Hi, this is Enthusiastic Steve, and today I want to show you a quick video on a VHF commercial antenna. Now you may ask me, why am I looking at a commercial antenna? Well, this commercial antenna covers the VHF band, also covers the 2 meter band, also covers the marine band, also covers the like the commercial VHF area from 160 up to about 168 megahertz. This gives a very large coverage, useful for the amateur radio operator and the scanner operator, etc. Brilliant for the radio enthusiast. It literally kicks the proverbial backside of other antennas. The Sirio model GP6 Echo, a VHF band antenna, 5/8 over 5/8 wave. Brilliant gain. Let's take a look. Usually when we go looking for new 2 meter antennas, we don't tend to look at the commercial sector. We just tend to look at the standard companies that make amateur radio equipment. But commercial equipment out there is equally as good and offers very good value for money. So let's take a look at this VHF antenna, which offers a lot more than you would expect. This commercial VHF antenna, made by Sirio, a well-known company, is basically a bare bones white stick collinear. Remove the white stick and basically this is what you get inside. When you purchase this antenna, you get the old basic instructions, but nice and clear, some warning labels about putting these antennas up with high power cables, etc., and some advice on actually mounting. The small instruction booklet is actually very informative. It shows you an SWR chart. Comes with a cutting chart as well, so it shows you how to cut the elements to fit the area of the VHF band that you wish to operate in. The antenna is designed to work from 140 megahertz up to 175 megahertz. You can tune it so you get a very good VSWR on all those or any one of those frequencies. Tuning of the antenna is achieved by cutting elements L and L1 to certain lengths. After this, just follow a simple assembly procedure. Right, let's take a look at what's in the box and just look at the basic tools you need to assemble it. I would suggest some self-amalgamating tape to waterproof some joints. Also get some normal electrical tape would be handy. A set of metric spanners. The spanner sizes you really need are 10mm and 16mm. Screwdrivers and the Allen key the attachment comes with the actual kit itself. You also need a small hacksaw, a little junior hacksaw will suffice just to be able to cut the elements, and a half decent tape measure. Now let's take a quick look at the actual components themselves of the antenna. This is the center boss section, basically where everything screws into. Solid piece of metal, good cast, very strong indeed. You're not going to have any problems. Here's a comparison of size. The top element screws on the top, the leg elements screw in the side, and the base pole we'll come to shortly goes into the bottom. On the underside you can see the standard antenna connection. This antenna is capable of operating up to 200 watts power. Moving on to the leg elements or the counterpoises, you have 3 in total, all made of very sturdy material, very strong. You're not going to have any problems with the threads or the rods, even if they're big hefty pigeon lands on them. Again, here's some coins for comparison of size. Now for the main vertical element. Now this antenna is a good old size. It's about 9 foot in old money from top to bottom. So the top whip section is actually quite a length, but it's in 2 parts with a center section. It's very sturdy, as you can see. You're not going to have any problems with this whatsoever. Now in the box you get a small little plastic package. Don't lose this, it's very important. You've got the Jubilee clips that hold the units together. You've got some waterproof ends and your Allen key. And also the bit where the magic happens. The delay, the inductor, the coil, the centerpiece. These are 5/8 over 5/8 antennas. So to keep them in phase you have to add this little centerpiece. And it's very strong, very sturdily made. Now, the only thing that's missing from this little kit, this antenna, is the actual mounting pole itself. This is an additional extra. Sirio make them, other manufacturers make them, or like myself, I already had one laying around the shed. So you do need to mount a pole at the base with brackets, so you can actually mount it to an external pole. On final assembly, once you've got the coax threaded through the tube, which is important because we tend to forget that bit, secured into the base, you can slide the pole into the bottom section, and it is secured by just 2 grub screws using the accompanying Allen key. Next comes the counterpoises, the 3 legs. These simply screw into the base section. Nip them up with a spanner lightly. They're good threads, nice and sturdy. Some people would recommend using Loctite or thread locks to make sure they're secure. I don't think this is necessary. Plus also it can act as an insulator, diminishing what they're trying to achieve. So just screw them in, nip them up with a spanner, they will suffice. And as they used to say on a famous British TV children's programme, here's one I made earlier. This is the bottom section complete. Now the next bit is to cut the elements to the actual part of the VHF band you wish to operate in. This is achieved by looking at the graphs and measuring and cutting the top and lower elements as per the actual diagram. Now for my own requirements, I bought this antenna purely as a receiving antenna for my scanners, etc. I'm interested in the upper end of the VHF band, around about 164 megahertz upwards into the commercial area, and this will also allow me to drop down into the marine band area as well, especially on AIS, which is just a couple of megahertz below. So I'm cutting this one around about 164 for my own needs, but of course you can cut this wherever you wish in the VHF band. Now I cannot emphasize enough, and you're probably all of you are aware of this, and you've all made the mistakes. If you're going to measure and cut something, take your time, measure it once, measure it twice, measure it 3 times, because once you've made that cut, there's no going back. Okay, so make sure you're aware of what the sizes are, the bottom section and the top section, and they do slightly differ. They're not identical. Measure the actual rods, mark them clearly with some tape. Make sure you are aware that you're going to cut them at the bottom or the top of the tape you put on. I've done that before. I've marked it up and I've cut the wrong side. So get it all clear. Don't rush it. Just use a small junior hacksaw. It's it goes through there quite easily, and you end up with 2 elements. The lower section, L1, is now ready to screw onto the base. Again, hand tighten it and then just nip it up with a good spanner, but just don't over tighten it. Now the centre section can now be slid over the lower element. Just be aware there are different diameter each end, so make sure you don't try and force it over it. Then this is secured in place by using the supplied Jubilee clips. And then basically repeat the process with the top element, secure the Jubilee clips, and that is the antenna all assembled, ready to go up on your pole. Now for those of you old enough to remember the NCIS series with Gibbs, where he was building his boat in his basement and realised he couldn't get the boat out of the house, well, I did have to slightly disassemble this antenna to get it out safely, and then chuck it in the garden and quickly rebuild it. So let's just whiz through this very quickly. Top element, screw it on the base. Put the counterpoises in, nip them up with a spanner. Allen key, base unit. Screw them up so they're nice and straight. Attach everything, tighten it all down, and there's the antenna. Yes, my garden does need weeding. Now for a quick enthusiastic Steve assembly tip. Now you've put everything together, you've bolted them up. Now some of you might still want to use some thread lock or something to make sure nothing's going to come loose. The other tip is, of course, like to wire lock them, but just use tie wraps. Wrap tie wraps around them in the direction so they can't come undone. Secure the tie wraps and these things will stay in place, vibration free, won't come loose, and they will be there for years to come. With the antenna now built, it is actually going to go up on this mast here. Currently, this is supporting the top of my delta loop, and at the very top there is a 4-metre antenna. 4-metre antenna is going to come down. I'm going to modify the top of the mast. I might have to remove one of the poles. There's some noisy seagulls flying around here at the moment, and the VHF antenna is going to go up there. So I'll stick it up there, show you a few techniques to do to secure it safely, and then we'll do some on-air testing. Now again, coming back to the mountain pole, most of you have seen or used these before. They can, if you're attaching them to a fiberglass pole, actually put quite a bit of pressure on the contact points. So watch this little Enthusiastic Steve tip. Here's a little tip I learned. Now if you're going to put a metal bracket onto a fiberglass pole, it's going to tend to bite into the pole and can damage it quite easily. Just use some wooden pencils, cut them down, place them on and tape them around the pole, and then actually tape them on there and clamp the metal to the wood. Then the metal will bite into the actual wooden pencils and not the fiberglass pole, spreading the load. And therefore you won't damage the pole, and the pole will take the weight very easily. In this instance, I cut the pencils in half and taped them to the pole in two places where the brackets were going to coincide. And there we have it, with the bracket in place, nice and secure, nice and firm. One other thing to note is, again, the antenna socket itself. Now once you've threaded this through the mountain pole, you attach it onto the base unit. It is actually quite deeply recessed. Unless you've got tiny fingers, you're going to struggle. So prepare yourself with some small pointy pliers to actually be able to tighten it up. And here it is, finally assembled, ready to go up in the air. That's the antenna now upright, connected to the top of the pole, coax connected. Nice height there, probably a good 30 odd feet or so, 35 feet maybe to the top. Should work very well. Right, we've ventured back indoors again. I've just flashed up on my computer the SDRPlay running SDRuno software. Now I have done some previous benchmark tests using a 2 meter 77s antenna, a discone, and now we're going to compare it with the VHF antenna and see how well it works. Now the VHF antenna, if you intend to transmit on it, you really need to cut it and tune it to the band you wish to use. If you're a marine operator and licensed, of course, cut it for the marine band. If you're an amateur radio operator, cut it for the 2 meter band to give you optimum VSWR. But as a receiving antenna, this antenna will receive very well right across the whole VHF spectrum and a little bit beyond. Now VSWR will be high if you were to transmit at those edges, but as we were just receiving, it does a fair old job. And I think I'll demonstrate to you in a minute how much better it is than a conventional discone. So if you're a scanner operator, if you just like listening across the bands, listening to aircraft even down on the VHF, marine band or commercial businesses, this antenna will outperform a discone, and I shall demonstrate that. Right, I've tuned to the center spike here on the screen. It's 162.1. That is an AIS frequency. Some people monitor AIS. They're like a digital type signal. They come from the ships. If you're anywhere near the coastline or rivers or docks, you will get these signals. Now this signal at the moment is coming through via my discone antenna, and it's approximately, well, it's not approximately, it's just over 8.5, 8.6 on the signal meter. I'm now going to swap over to the VHF antenna. Now my VHF antenna is cut at the moment for just under, well, around about 165, 164, 165 megahertz, just a little bit above. But just to demonstrate, out of band, or not that far off, a couple of megahertz, this will still work and outperform the discone. So let me switch it over. Remember that 8.5, 8.6 on the signal meter on the discone. I've now swapped over to the VHF antenna. I don't know if you can see that there. They see the red is showing there now. It's actually over 9. It's about a 9.3, I'd say 9.2, 9.3 on the signal meter. A really good increase in signal strength. I've now tuned the SDRuno down to the 2 meter band. Now I have a relatively weakish, well, mediocre strict signal. That's an all-star repeater, some miles away from me actually, on 145.3375. Now that's picking this signal up again on the meter there, 6.5, 6.6 on the signal meter. This is on the discone. Now the discone does perform fairly well on the 2 meter band. So I'll switch over to the VHF antenna to see how much better. Again, this is outside of what I've cut it for the band, but because it's a very broadband receive antenna, I'm hoping to get a better increase in signal strength. So remember that it's about 6.5, 6.6 on the meter currently. Right, I've switched over to the VHF antenna. Again, remember it's cut for 164 megahertz, but even on the receive it's over 7.1, 7.2. So again, a small increase there. So it's outperforming the discone again, even down on the 2 meter band. I wonder how far I can push it. I wonder if we can go right down onto the aircraft band. Is this going to make a good airband antenna as well? Right, I've come down to the aircraft band now, 128.6 megahertz. Now I've tuned to a very strong signal because it's a constant signal. This is a Volmet signal. This Volmet signal is about 7-8 miles, maybe 9 miles as the crow flies. 9 miles, 8 to 9 miles away, over some terrain. So it's just over the other side of the hill to me. But I'm still picking up 9.5, 9.5, 9.6, say 9.5 on the signal meter, which you can see just up there. A little bit of red showing. That is on the discone antenna. Will the VHF antenna cut for 164 megs still perform better on the discone than the discone at this frequency? Let's plug it in and find out. And the answer to that question is a yes. Look at this. Look at that red showing now. I know it's small on your screen, but you can see how much red it is. That is now 15 or 16 dB, 15 and 16 over on the S meter. A very, very big increase. So this VHF antenna cut for 160 odd megahertz. I wouldn't like to transmit on it on that, even if you're licensed at all, because the VSWR would be out. But as a receive antenna, it's performing very, very well. So as an alternative to a discone, any scanner radio operators out there, this is a brilliant antenna. Now you might ask me, well, I don't just listen to VHF, I listen to UHF. I like to go up in the 400 megs band. Will this antenna work up there? Is it kind of harmonic resonant up on 400 megs? Well, let's have a look. Right, there's the discone back online. I'm up on 453 megahertz now. There's some like business channels and signals coming up and down there. I'm tuned to this particular one here, this spike here. There's a constant spike. This is coming from about 15 miles away. Again, over a little bit of a hill. I think you'll find there might be traffic wardens or something like that. But anyway, who knows? But there's a constant signal coming in on this UHF band. And this is the discone. And up here, it says 5, 5.2, 5.3. Now, there's probably no way the VHF antenna is going to perform up there, unless, of course, harmonically, it does work on the UHF band as a receive antenna. Let's plug it in and find out. Remember that? 5 to 5.2, 5.3. And voila, look at this. Signal 7.2 to 7.3. A big jump even on the UHF band. My advice would be ditch your discone for all those radio operators, all those scanner operators out there. And I know I've been an advocate of the discone because they work one antenna right across the whole broadband. But if your prime listening areas are aircraft, marine, VHF and UHF, this antenna, this one antenna, does the job. Absolutely, you know, it does brilliantly. And on the VHF band, because it's cut for that particular band, I've had a quick scan up and down on my scanner. I'm now hearing multiple more signals than I did before. I'm pulling them in from further away, which I could than on my discone. So it gives you a lot more things to listen to. Now, again, I want to listen to the marine band and the AIS. That's something I want to get into in the future. This is a perfect antenna for it. I might even try it later. I might actually try it on the 2 meter band and just see what the VSWR is, even though it's cut for 164. I'm not expecting any miracles on that, but I'll tell you what, give me a minute. I'll plug it into my 2 meter radio, and we'll just see on low power, just see what the VSWR is going through this VHF antenna, cut for 164 and not 145. Let's try it out. Okay, just purely as an experiment, this antenna, I said, the VHF antenna is cut for 164 megahertz. I've gone handheld now, so I apologise for a little bit shaking. I've had to stretch the leads a little bit to turn things around here to get the meter to plug in. Now, I've put my 2 meter radio on 145.4. I'll do a quick call. I'm on low power, and the VSWR, see if it's usable, even though the antenna is not cut currently for 2 meters. If you cut it for 2 meters, you'll get a 1-to-1 good out of VSWR. Let's just try out. Mike sits Whiskey Victor Victor doing a quick test call on 2 meters, 145-400. And you can see there the VSWR is 2.2, kind of usable. I mean, it's a little bit on the high side, but again, the antenna is not cut for it. But you could use this. I would, on low power, I'd quite happily use that at 2.2. Yeah, it's under 3. People get really a bit strange about VSWRs if it's anything higher than 1-to-1, but 2.2 you can get away with. Okay, I believe at low power. I wouldn't run high power on it, it'd be too much coming back. But if you just want a local chin bag, and if it's the only antenna you've got up and you're using it for receive for something else, or even if you cut it back a little bit, bring it back down to the marine band channels, that VSWR would probably drop on 2 meters. Well, it would. But there you go, you could use this antenna on 2 meters if you're licensed, and it works perfectly well. And as a receiving antenna, absolutely fantastic. What more is there to say about it? I've been very, very impressed by this Sirio antenna. Oh, just one last thing. I've got to show you this. I've just tuned up on the UHF band. Now, this is the amateur radio band, a repeater. I want to just call into this repeater. The repeater is about 15 miles away. VSWR should not be usable at this frequency because it's a VHF antenna. But just watch the meter. Mike sits Whiskey Victor Victor calling, testing the input into the repeater. VSWR 1 to 1.7, and access the repeater, which is again quite a distance from me through terrain again, which is I sometimes struggle to get into. So it's doing really, really well. So that was the Sirio GP6 Echo Antenna VHF band, but it is so much more. It does kick the proverbial backside of other antennas. Now, as a quick extra bonus for those 446 megahertz users out there, the old pirates, it does work on 446 as well and gives even a 1-to-1 VSWR. So a massive thank you again for watching an Enthusiastic Steve video. Please go through my other content. There's lots out there. Massive big thanks to my subscribers and all the people that contact me regularly. Absolutely lovely for your support. So if you're in a market for a new antenna, 2 meters or otherwise, or you're a scanner radio operator, please don't overlook these commercial antennas. They're brilliant. All the very best. This has been Enthusiastic Steve. Cheers for watching.